Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast.
Welcome, friends, to episode number 59 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. If you have a lot on your mind and you have this desire to also unearth your creativity, your next level of thinking, and to solve a problem that's on your mind, I'm going to share with you a practice of journaling that I've used that has helped me and many others move forward in their life. So I think of journaling as writing with the pressure taken off of it. When we think about the world that we live in, we have such a pressure to perform, to complete things, to create right now. And having a place where the pressure is removed can feel like such a relief. When I began journaling, it was at this time when I was really willing and open to try new things. I was trying all these different and new ways of working in this pursuit of understanding myself better. And this idea of journaling felt like something that really interested me. It piqued my curiosity. It was an entirely creative and different pursuit. It started when I had began investigating coaching as my next career. And it was an entirely creative and different pursuit. So I began with Julia Cameron's morning pages. She has a book called The Artist's Way that accompanies it. And the premise of the morning pages is that you write 3 pages each morning for 12 weeks straight. And the idea is that what often stops us from being creative and expressing ourselves is this pressure of trying to create something. And so the simple act of just showing up, writing what it is on your mind, what's on your heart, what you're experiencing in that moment without the expectation of it being some kind of performance for anyone else, allows you to just write. You write without expectation that someone's going to read it, and you write for you. So I did. I wrote about what I did the day before. I wrote about the ideas I had. I wrote about where I was on my journey of self-discovery, what I was feeling, what I was noticing, musings, mental chatter, all of those things. And yes, when I began, it felt stiff. I thought, what am I going to write about? Or how am I going to know what is actually working here? How do I know this is working? But as the weeks passed, it became easier. What happens when you write for you? You begin to find your own voice. So it allowed me to understand who I was when I didn't try to be something. When you think about the next breakthrough you want to have, many times what we're really trying to access is our intuition, our ability to know, our ability to create a solution, our ability to think with a different kind of clarity. It feels hard to do that when you feel that you don't have your own voice. It's this idea of, well, I don't know what the best decision is. I just wish I did. And so this process that feels like a creative pursuit is also the same kind of pursuit that allows you to not just express yourself authentically and be more of who you are in this world, but make quicker and more aligned and accurate decisions without the feeling of overwhelm and uncertainty that often comes when we're not sure. And so some of these practices that I share with you over the course of the different podcasts may seem foreign to you or may seem like something that isn't related to the thing you're actually trying to do, this really practical real life matter. But the thing about it is that we're not just the thing we do. We're not just the thing we do. We are the person we think we are. And when you think you're the kind of person that has a creative life, that lives with a sense of freedom and abundance, then you do things from that place. Journaling is just a practice, but if you don't believe you're a person that can be creative, that can open up and work through topics that are on their mind, then you're not going to do the things like make the decisions and move forward quickly. We often think that there's something to be had first before we can move forward and get that breakthrough and have that result, or understand what it is we need to do to achieve. But often it's the act of actually thinking of yourself first as this empowering identity. We'll go into identity a lot more later, but this idea that you have the ability to do this as much as anyone else does has to be that firm belief and vision before you sit down and think, okay, I'm going to do this thing. So if you're kind of struggling thinking, I'm just not the type of person that does this, this might be why, right? This whole kind of mindset and belief around who you are and what kind of people do this kind of work. And so just check to see if that mindset aligns with the kind of life that you want to live. And if it doesn't, you might want to check it out, see which way you want to go, and make a decision from there. And if it does, then great, let's move on. So when I started thinking about this process of writing, there was this thought of, if we're not trying to be someone, what would we say, be, or do? And I know this sounds counterintuitive because a lot of times people feel like, well, I need to know who I am and what my purpose is so I know what to be, say, or do. There's also this act of, if you removed all the noise, what would you naturally be? What would you naturally say? What would you naturally do? This takes some work, whether you do it through meditation, mindfulness practices, whether you do it through questioning your thoughts, whether you do it through journaling. The ability for you to reduce the amount of mental clutter and chatter and interference that is in our lives allows us then to focus on what it is we actually have in front of us. And so many of us arrive on that journey of discovering who we are, of realizing that we want to self-actualize or become this, version of ourselves that we might not have seen before. We come to it and we wonder, who am I? What do I really care about? What does my voice even sound like? What would I say if no one was listening but me? And what would I want to do if there was no one else to please but myself? And when you've spent a lifetime or decades working to serve others or to please others, it feels uncomfortable, different, new, unnerving to be so structureless in any area. And so I get it. It can be really strange to think of ourselves and have this feeling of, well, I'm doing this just for me. This feels so self-centered. It feels selfish. But it can be the way that you actually are the most trustworthy, honest, and selfless for others. And I would encourage you and challenge you to think about this, because if you feel like you are someone who is really adept at pleasing other people, or you've spent a lifetime really getting in tune with how to manage other people's emotions, feelings, and reactions, a practice where you get to do something just for you is likely the kind of balance you need to question and realign the actions that you're currently taking or the thoughts that you're having about the thing, and relieve maybe some resentment that you might start to feel, or tiredness, or this feeling of being burnt out. And when we don't know our own voice, what happens is that we have trouble making decisions that are born out of our own desires. We might not have any trouble making decisions about how to make other people happy, or what that person wants. What's the best thing to do to get all these people to be happy? What's the best thing to do to perform to this person's level of expectation? But we might have trouble making decisions about what it is we want to do if no one else was there. We have trouble following our desires. We have trouble leading the way, because what happens when you need to lead, you also have to have a clear sense of a purpose or a vision or your principles or just something that is not yet there out in front of you. And I would say the difference between someone who's leading and just managing is the level of expectation and willingness to accept that they are going to be heading into an unknown and they're willing to go there. When you're managing, you're arranging the circumstances around the day-to-day as you know it, and without kind of that big expectation that you have to forge this new path constantly. When you are in the state of leadership, self-leadership, or leading others, you are most effective when you're in that dropped-in state of knowing that the world can be swirling, knowing that change is constantly happening, yet you're finding a path forward, you're taking the next step, you're guiding people to take the next step, you're guiding you to take the next step forward all the time. And so without our own voice, we have trouble doing that. And when I say your own voice, it is that highest self coming through. It is the what would I do if it was done out of love? What would I naturally feel called to do? And that may seem like a hard thing to get to, which is why it is so important for us to cultivate this. Because when you have that essence, when you have that truth, life becomes way more friendly, easier to live, and your ability to see life as working for you and your ability to see life as a friendly place to be grows. And so if you're not getting in touch with your voice, your own desires, or what it is you would naturally love to do, try these practices, right? Try journaling. You might end up finding this for yourself. And that same certainty that you just wish you want to have in your lives is the same certainty that those who lead people and who lead themselves, they just seem to possess in spades. And my question for you is, what would it feel like to know deeply what it is that you desire, even when you feel anxious or uncertain about the path forward? And so this kind of journaling, named morning pages, which is from the time of day in which you're completing them, it will help you relieve anxiety as well as achieve breakthroughs. It puts words to all your concerns. It gets that mental clutter out of your head and down onto the paper. And when that happens, it allows you to start to examine and sift and just weed out all the things that are on your mind. I found that I became so much more clear about whatever topic or idea that I was writing about through the process of journaling. It often felt in the beginning like this spiral where I was writing things down and I was unearthing confusion and I didn't even know where I began and started. But whether or not you realize it, even that process itself of unwinding all your thoughts, of feeling the confusion, allows you to just not hold it all somewhere else. You start to realize that this is a thing that can be managed. It's a thought you're having. It's not a permanent state of being. It is something that you can work through. It is something that can be put down on paper. And just as formless as your thoughts are, as soon as you put it down on paper, you start to realize, well, I could change that too. So there's this paradox that happens that as soon as you almost try to think it and it becomes real, when you start to examine it, you realize how not real it is. And so this is a little bit of a way to kind of turn that thinking into something else. And I want you to see that sometimes we're going to do these practices that feel like we're making something bigger and more real than it is. Why would I want to sit there and think about my problems, for example, during a meditation? Why would I want to focus on that? And the reason I do that is that it allows me to question that. It allows me to ask, why is that not a problem? And give a time and space to actually practice the things that help me function and live a more peaceful and clear life. And so again, we might journal feeling like, well, this is a mess. I'm just dumping out all this stuff and it seems entirely formless and confusing. I'm anchoring myself into more confusion and into more states of uncertainty as I do it. But what's happening as you do that is that you start working through it. You start popping that bubble that this is something that is just always going to be confusing for you. This is something that's always going to be a problem in your mind. This is something that's never going to get solved. And as you gently let it land, you are then moving through it day by day. Because as you keep asking the questions, you keep looking at it, and you keep questioning it, you start to see that it doesn't stand up, and that maybe this problem isn't a big problem. Maybe the thing you're looking for isn't what you need. And maybe, just maybe, you can still move forward. And so when I started to find that I had this morning practice where I started writing and writing and writing, it became this refuge, this place of, you know what? I'm not sure what to do or where to go, so I'm just going to write. And what happens is that it starts to morph over time into this place where you can overcome a problem. And so you're like listening to this thinking, well, I'm on a journal for a breakthrough, right? May, give me the 5 steps to journal for a breakthrough. Well, it starts off with just journaling. Get yourself into the practice. Get yourself into the place where you actually start to write. Then I can share with you this next step, which is that here's a way to start to share your thoughts. You start to share your struggles. You start to share the reality of the situation for you as it stands right here, right now. And what I would do is then I would write about a decision I needed to make. Here is the thing that I'm trying to think through right now. And as I did that, it allowed me to now structure my thoughts. What is the thing I'm thinking about? What is the decision I'm trying to make? A, B, or C? Or I need to come up with something and I don't know what to come up with for this thing that I'm trying to do. Or I have this heavy thing that's on my mind right now that I'm trying to understand more. Or I have this amazing thing and I just don't know where to go with it next. It doesn't always have to be a problem in the sense of this heavy, terrible thing. It can be your ability to take something that's just a nugget in your mind that you're like, oh, this is gold. I just want to dig into this a little bit further. And it allows you to move things forward in a way where you can reflect upon it. So this is the way where you evolve from the thoughts and struggles to a place where you start to structure your thoughts for the ability to see clear decisions. I've also journaled on goals. I've journaled asking myself what it is I truly want to be. What do I want to do? What do I want to have in life? I've journaled on how do I want to feel? What do I want to receive today? Gratitude. That's a big one. I've journaled on gratitude for so many years, and I continue to make gratitude a daily practice in my life. When you write it down, it helps reinforce these positive moments in your life and to relive those moments. And when you do that, you actually rewire your brain to scan for positivity. You can do this with these things that feel terrible, your moments of greatest suffering, and you can play that over and over again as well. I would not recommend it, but you can do that for those suffering moments. And you also rewire your brain to think that the world is a place where that kind of danger and that kind of suffering is a constant. So when we do not investigate what's in our mind, we let it just be. We don't even question that the world doesn't have to be a place where we suffer so much, that this person doesn't have to bring us so much pain, that the situation is just not the worst thing in the world. So when we start to question that, we're allowing ourselves then to just sit with it long enough to understand that maybe, just maybe, even if you have a glimpse of this for a moment in time, it's going to be everything for you. Maybe, just maybe, this isn't what you thought it was. Maybe, just maybe, this could be something that is not a problem for you. Maybe, just maybe, this person could be your best friend. I don't know if that's the truth, but I want you to ask the question if it could be true. So I've thought about when I was thinking about this podcast, how I wanted to share my own practices because it's evolved so much. And I think it's really helpful for me to share what's worked for me in the beginning as well as what's worked for me now, because the evolution is really important to see. Sometimes you think, oh, I don't want what someone did in the beginning of their practice because I want the results that they're having now. I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't do the things that I did in the beginning. So don't be disheartened if you feel like I'm just at the beginning of journaling. It's going to take me forever to kind of get to a place where I'm journaling on a breakthrough. It's not. But at the same time, it is what it is. You're at the beginning. And when you're at the beginning, you're not sure yet of what it is you want to write about, how it is you want to form your thoughts, what it is you want to structure it on, what are those vast opportunities and experiences that you're going to have. So just sit there with it and let it be what it is, whether you've been journaling for years or whether you are on day 0. That is fine. There's nowhere else to be except where you are right now. And I'm just sharing with you kind of the spectrum only because there might be people on here who have journaled for a while and they're looking for maybe some new ways to do this. And so just allow yourself to kind of anchor into what resonates for you in this discussion. And so when I talk about journaling on goals, that might create the sense of anxiety. Well, I don't even know what my goals are, May, or I don't have these goals. That is okay. I journaled on goals when I started discovering goals. You can journal on the question, what is my goal? I would love to find a goal. I would love to think about how it is I want to feel. So let yourself be wherever it is you are and see very clearly what it is that you want next. As I've evolved through journaling, I've journaled also on intuitive development. Some of you may really resonate with this. Some of you may be like, what is that at all? For me, these are all my experiences of, for example, my first time going into the Akashic Records, my second time going to the Akashic Records, my experiences with energy healing, my precognitive moments, and the things that I saw and the visions that I had and things that I knew and how the experiences became real. So I began to also use journaling as a way to process some of these experiences that I was having and to even just record them so that I could read them for myself. When we are just in our heads, we're sometimes not even clear about what it is we're thinking and what it is we know and what it is we want. And so just even the process of getting it down on paper allows us to move into this next place. And for those of you who are like, I'm all in, I want to start journaling, I can't wait. Here are some patterns that I've noticed in this process of journaling that may be helpful to you. So some tips that will make your journaling even more effective. So the first one is journal on strong emotions. And so this one, when you get into the world of self-development, you start to realize, well, like, oh, emotions are everything, or emotions are not real. It doesn't matter really what you think about emotions, but the reason you want to journal on emotions is that it allows you to understand what is really important to you right now. It doesn't mean that emotion is good, the emotion is bad, it's wrong, or it's right. I'm not talking about any of those things, but I'm talking about when you want to work on what is most pressing for you, it usually has a strong emotion tied to it. It allows you to use that time where you're writing and journaling. And again, you just write. In that process, you can write on things that actually matter to you, or you can write on things that don't matter to you. I would suggest you use that time and write on things that matter to you. So if you don't have a strong emotion around it, I would ask yourself, where do I have a strong emotion? For example, when I journal on goals that I have no emotion about, for example, making a certain amount of money in 5 years' time, it's not really helpful for me. I don't feel that it moves me any closer to it. I just look at it and be like, okay, I just made up a random number. What it does mean when I notice that, right? So all these things that were like, that didn't work. Well, what does work? Maybe the opposite. Oh, so when I journal on goals that feel more meaningful to me, for example, asking what that money will do for me. So it's not like that first thing is wrong. It's just that maybe I needed to get a second layer of it, which is if I wanted to make a certain amount of money, why is that? And what would that money do? What would I do with that money? What would it look like to live a life with that? That is really what we're getting to. Many people don't even know, oh, I'm going to get the thing. Well, why are we going to get it? Oh, I don't know. Or what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with all that money when you get it? Where's it going to go? How are you going to use it? How would your life change as a result of it? Same goes for any other goal that you have. It's not just money. It can be career. It can be a sense of well-being in your life. It could be the relationships that you have with people. It can be your physical health. All of those things, when you're allowing yourself to tie into a strong emotion, you really allow yourself then to spend the time on something that actually matters to you. And so this is how you move from the fear of just writing down a random list that feels unachievable or meaningless to writing down how you actually want to live your life. And so that one tweak can help you change the way that you journal so that you will actually start to achieve more breakthroughs. So that one thing is this: journal on strong emotions. The second thing is this, and this is more of a thing to notice, is that wisdom, which is what we're often seeking when we're in the practice of journaling and we're in the practice of trying to move forward, it feels spacious. So if I'm looking for a path forward, it's usually found in those kind of answers where I'm creating something new. I'm creating a new way of thinking about how much time I have. I'm creating a new way of doing work. I'm creating the ability for me to put what's most important front and center. I am removing what's not essential. So you can see how all these things are about spaciousness, more time, removing things that don't need to be there, thinking about a new way of living and working that allows for me to have more space. Usually that is the place of wisdom. When we are in fear, which usually feels like the opposite of wisdom, we see things as short, small, must be done immediately, right now. And it's not to say that if your hand was in the fire, you shouldn't move it out of the fire, but you would just naturally do that. I wouldn't say that requires any wisdom to get there. These are kind of natural, instinctive things that we do. What I would start to ask is, if I have a pattern which I notice is bringing me suffering and stress, I might need wisdom to move out of it, because my initial reaction, that quick thinking that I'm currently having, may be the issue. It may be the thing that's causing me this suffering. My immediate thoughts around this situation, my immediate story that I put into play. So that person is just like this, or it's always going to be this way, or this means that it never works. That's the thinking that I would say, I need some spaciousness around it. I need to create a gap before I respond. And sometimes the ability to write down what it is we're experiencing, how do we want to create this gap, what it is we want to respond to, is that feeling of spaciousness, is that feeling of almost widening the place between a thing happening and your reaction to it. So again, another nuance, but one that feels important, because often when we're journaling, we get stuck onto this place of, I feel like I'm running in a circle. I don't even know if I'm getting anywhere. But as you do that, and if you're looking for wisdom and clarity, ask yourself, what would feel more spacious right now? What would feel like it would create time and space in my life or in my thinking? All right. The other pattern that I've noticed is that if I want to effectively journal, I often ask myself a question. I like to journal on questions. So I have a few prompts that I like to use that allow me to self-coach myself through some situations. Sometimes we're looking for amazing results as we start to journal, but we're not asking ourselves amazing questions that would allow us to get there. So if we're not asking higher quality questions about the way we live our lives, we're not going to live higher quality lives. For example, I'm going to give you a few prompts to get started, but I remember one clear example is, there was a moment I remember when I was desiring to travel less, which, as someone that has spent years consulting on the road and literally traveling pretty much 100% of the time. And someone who does a lot of training work and facilitation work, that is a constant thing I have to think about, a constant, I would say, situation that's present in my life where I have to measure and think through, is this something that I want to travel for? Is this something where I want to go? And I remember when I was trying to think of the way I wanted to shift my life, the question that I was asking was, what do I think I can have? You know, what's that weird, what's that just like one little incremental change that I can make that wouldn't rock the boat? But the question I wasn't asking, which I eventually did ask, was, what do I want? Like, what do I really want? Not what is the thing that I think is acceptable to have. But if I could just have it and no one's going to be mad at me, or maybe people will be mad at me and it doesn't really matter because it's not about them, what is it? What would that be? And so you can see the difference. Very often we are working within constraints that we don't even realize we can remove for ourselves. Not because they don't exist in our life, but because they exist in our minds. And where we are in our minds will determine where we are in our lives externally, outside of our heads, is where we end up manifesting and creating this life. And so come back to this place of, in your mind, going big with your questions, asking higher quality questions so you can live higher quality lives. So a few prompts to get you started, okay? Because some of you are off to the races, you have paper in hand and pen in hand, and you're ready to go. Or even if you're not, you can come back to this and journal on these questions at some point in time. They will let you kind of at least get started in this process. And the first one is this: what does it feel like to take responsibility for my life? What does it feel like to take responsibility for my life? Again, these don't have to be easy questions for you to answer, but they should begin that process of reflection and inquiry that allows you to start to unravel maybe some of the thinking that has already been in place. This is if you're looking for a new way of thinking. This is if you're looking for that next breakthrough. If you're not, you probably don't want to ask yourself that question. But if you do, you're going to want to ask, what does it feel like to take responsibility for your life? The other questions are, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel today? So this allows us to get into that space of reminding ourselves that we have a choice, reminding ourselves that the way I want to live is the way I want to live, reminding ourselves that we might get to decide how we are going to move into that next thing with a state of feeling peace or clarity or joy. The next question is, how do I want to be? That's just, how do I want to show up? I think about this in many different situations. If I think about my agenda for the day, for example, I can ask myself this question constantly, which is, how do I want to be? How do I want to show up in this situation? Who do I want to show up as for this? What would be the most effective way for me to be in this situation? Or how do I just want to be today, because this is a day where I'm resting and recharging and relaxing? The next question is this: what do I want to give? What do I want to give? We are often so much in this place of, I want this in my life, I want that in my life, but we really need to start from this place of giving, or we are feeling unbalanced when we feel like all it is asking. But when we give and we ask ourselves, what do I want to give? You actually put your mind into a place of abundance. And when you put your mind into a place of abundance, you actually are allowing yourself to receive more. So these are these interesting paradoxes, which if you only look at that one layer, you might not feel that it's worthwhile. But when you can go into that second, third, fourth, fifth layer, you can start to see, if I do these things and I change the way that I start to think, if I question that giving means I am losing, then I might end up finding the freedom that I am so desiring by asking for all the things I want to have in my own life. And you can see now, right, why these questions start to prompt some really good answers as you start to journal. What do I want to receive? Also a really worthy question, because sometimes we are in the place of giving so much that we don't allow ourselves to accept that people are showing up for us in our lives. We don't allow ourselves to actually see the reality that someone isn't actually hurting us. In fact, that we may be the ones doing that to ourselves because every time we're judging them for doing it. We can also ask ourselves where we might be not receiving in our lives and we feel resentful towards, right? And that just is that first step to, again, not beat yourself up, but to allow yourself to really know what it is that is in that space of your mind that's starting to interfere with your ability to move forward in your life. Okay, the next question is, what am I grateful for? Classic question that is really helpful. I do a lot of planning and journaling and meditation kind of practices, things that help me prep my mind, things that help me move forward with a lot more clarity. And gratitude is always present in any of these things. It has to be this almost curiosity of wondering what else can I find to be grateful for in my life, because it really is a practice that delivers tremendous rewards. And I'll do a whole thing on gratitude because I remember thinking, well, this feels a little hokey. I just keep saying I'm grateful for this or grateful for that, but it actually works. And then the next one is, what should I know right now? I love this one. And I am actually in this practice now where I ask myself that every single night. And it's one of the ways that I do energy readings for myself as well. So a really powerful one that I'm actually going to share a little bit more on, because I wanted to share a message for you on that last question. It is a passage that I wrote in response to that question without any expectation of anyone reading it. And as I was doing some research for this episode, I looked back at some of my entries and I thought this one would really resonate with you. So here it is. There is an unlimited path forward if I just keep walking. Just keep going. Today, I had this brief glimpse of a thought that was this. If I keep doing this thing this way, listening and acting from a place of alignment, I may have the option to do the thing that I always wanted to do in the timeline that I wanted. That was such an amazing thought. What if all it took was to put that timeline and expectation on a shelf and let the universe sort it all out? What if there was a path? What if all it took was to listen to yourself to discover the path? That acting upon these nudges may be the only thing we have to do in our lives. So that was that passage, and this was years ago that I wrote this. And again, I wrote without expectation of rereading. I wrote without expectation of sharing, and I would encourage you to do the same. You absolutely can then evolve to writing with the expectation of sharing, writing with the expectation of rereading. But one of the reasons why it's really powerful for you to go there first in that place of, well, no one's going to read it and it doesn't really matter, is because you're the most true. You're allowing yourself to really remove any of that noise and that filter and feel safe in the practice of writing things down, even things that you feel you struggle the most with, or things where you wouldn't want to go with a person, right? You might not even talk it out loud to anyone. So again, I'm sharing this, but with that caveat that this was okay for me to share. I don't feel that this is something that I don't want to share, and I didn't write it with the intention of sharing it. So I know that this is just coming from this place of me sharing what's on my mind at that moment. And what's really neat for me is that how I see these themes that have continued to play out while I journal. I often find myself reading things back thinking, that's a wisdom that is coming through that I really resonate with. And so it's powerful for you to realize that you have wisdom in yourself that you may not feel gets expressed on the day-to-day, but it is there for you. It is there. And just like I was saying, maybe if you just listen to yourself, maybe if you just took that little bit of a nudge and said, what would I do if this was out of love? What would I naturally want to do next? And not look at all the stories of the future or of the past, you might find that the next path, the next step is very, very clear. And so if you haven't tried journaling at all and you want to start with morning pages, I'd highly recommend Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, which I had mentioned earlier. And her morning pages are an accompanying workbook. So I've done it myself. It is really this kind of creative and spiritual path that is really effective for people who want to be creative, who want to break through, and who want to learn who they are more. I would recommend that you read the book and do the morning pages together because it allows yourself to really experience it. There's also an exercise of taking you on these artist states that I think is really beautiful and a really interesting practice to do. So again, you can read the book and find out a lot more and just feel how it feels to write your thoughts down without expectation. It's often when we give of ourselves without expecting anything in return that we'll receive the most. And the paradox is going to be that your next breakthrough may just come when you're ready to give up that expectation that you must create something. And instead, you just get into the process. Get into the process of creating. Just let that be the thing that you're doing. Not that I must create, but I'm just going to write. I'm just going to write. All right, so let me know what resonates today with you. Always love to hear from you all. You can write to me. You can email me. You can respond. If you're listening to the podcast, respond through the show notes and comment there. Let me know how you use it. And I want to share that this month's leadership group coaching, we will be covering the process and the energy of achieving such an important part of who we are and getting the results that we want to see in our lives. We're going to dive into these practices of achieving in a way that doesn't burn us out, but allows us to utilize our time most effectively. So we'll be talking a little bit about time and how do we manage our time in this process. We're also going to dive into journaling for breakthroughs and results even more. So if you love this topic and you enjoy all these kinds of topics, you can go to www.mayemson.com/contact to learn more and understand if this is a good fit for you. All right, my friends, I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. I love you all and have a good one.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. It'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.